in Plano, Texas, and I'm speaking today with Joy Tan from Huawei. As we've reported, Joy, the U.S. and China are in a bit of a trade war, and Huawei seems to be caught in the middle. Huawei was put on the entity list by the United States government on May 16th, and since that time, there have been two different extensions given to U.S. suppliers who sell equipment, goods, and services to Huawei. What has the impact of all of this activity been on Huawei?
Well, Huawei's business continues to thrive. Actually, we achieved really good financial results for the first 3 quarters of the year. Revenue grew 24% year on year. However, having Huawei on the entity list is costing American companies money. That rating reported that companies like Micron, Synaptics, Skyworks Solutions lost $433 million in Q2. That's only a small sample of our US-based suppliers. Each year, Huawei purchased $11 billion in goods and services in the US. That equates to about 50,000 jobs in the US.
Does being on the entity list by the US government stifle innovation?
Sure. When you reduce choice in any market, especially technology, that will slow the rate of innovation, make it more expensive. Look at the AT&T telephone monopoly that the U.S. government broke apart in 1984. That opened up markets to competition and led to tremendous innovation within the telecom industry. But now, the U.S. government is preventing private companies from choosing who they can work with. That runs counter to open innovation and competition, which the U.S. has always stood for. So that will impact everyone.
How else do you see Huawei being on the entity list affecting the industry at large?
I think there will be an impact on cybersecurity as well. Today, virtually all equipment vendors rely on a global supply chain. So everyone faces security risks from a wide range of sources. Excluding 1 or 2 vendors based on their national origin will do nothing to secure the American networks. It's quite the opposite, actually. Excluding vendors will make the cyberspace more vulnerable because the remaining vendors will have less incentives to embrace industry-wide standards. So that will create more exposure for single points of failure.
The Federal Communications Commission is moving ahead with a ban on equipment from Huawei and ZTE inside of U.S.-funded telecom projects. What is your reaction to this development?
Well, the U.S. government has still not presented any evidence that Huawei's technology poses security threat. This kind of attempts to ban Huawei will do nothing to address what's really important, which is to secure the U.S. network infrastructure. The U.S. government should have a comprehensive and transparent approach to cybersecurity. The most effective way to secure network infrastructure is to establish risk-based testing standards. If this was really about cybersecurity, the U.S. government would test all vendors and hold everybody to the same testing standards. FCC's proposal has a potential large impact on rural Americans who will work and live in underserved areas. Many of them rely on Huawei for basic connectivity.
One of the things Huawei has done in the face of losing possible U.S. suppliers is it's developed its Harmony OS operating system. Can you tell me a little bit about the strategy behind the Harmony OS?
Harmony OS is a distributed operating system. It is a lightweight, compact OS with powerful functionality. But it has a lot of fewer lines of code than other operating systems in the market, which helps it make it more secure. It has a different purpose than Android and iOS. We're using Harmony OS to build a more integrated and shared ecosystem. So developers can build apps once and then flexibly deploy them across a range of different devices, which is great for developers and consumers. It will first be used on smart devices like smart speakers, smartwatches, in-vehicle systems. It could also replace Android on smartphones if necessary. Harmony OS is off to a good start. We just launched it several months ago. Already, a report from Counterpoint Research estimated that Harmony OS is going to surpass Linux to become the 5th most popular operating system for smart digital device by the end of 2020.
What about the Android operating system? Is Huawei still committed to Android?
Absolutely. Huawei is and will remain committed to Android operating system. We grew up with Android, and we have contributed a lot to its development. We love using Android. So do our consumers. We developed the Harmony OS for cross-platform use. While it can be extended for smartphone use, but we'll still prefer the Android system and Google GMS application ecosystem to provide services for our consumers.
Another aspect of the pressure that the U.S. has put on China and on Huawei is that a number of universities that were collaborating with Huawei have stopped collaborating. What is your reaction to this development?
Collaboration between businesses and universities is a two-way street. Businesses like Huawei can help universities commercialize their research results at a much faster pace. University professors can get actionable insights into pressing business challenges, real-world scenarios, and pursue the most practical direction for their research. However, we worry the ICT industry will soon face a bottleneck in development. With the progress we have made in 5G, we'll soon face the theoretical confines of Shannon's limit. That means, as an industry, there's going to be a cap on how fast we can reliably transfer data. That's a hard physical limit. Over the past decades, we have made a lot of progress with technological innovation. The next wave of development, we need more breakthroughs in basic theory.
When it comes to breakthroughs in basic theory, how do we accomplish that?
Universities are the driving force behind breakthroughs in theory, while breakthroughs in engineering and technology are usually joint efforts between universities and tech companies. And Polar Code's actually a very good example of this. Back in 2008, after 20 years of research, a Turkish professor named Erdal Arıkan invented Polar Codes. These are a new type of error-correcting codes that will allow us to transfer data at amazing speeds while ensuring the data do not get corrupted. So in 2008, the breakthrough was there, but it was stuck in the lab. Huawei saw the potential of Dr. Arıkan's discovery. We invested in more research to help build on his work. Fast forward to 2016, now Polar Codes are part of the 5G open standards. So you can see we need to ensure this kind of cross-border academic research continues and is allowed to prosper. The universities want it, the industry needs it. That's where the breakthroughs in theory will come from.
How much does Huawei invest in university partnerships each year, and what does it expect in return from those investments?
Each year, Huawei invests about $300 million on university partnerships. Currently, we work with more than 300 schools around the world. We collaborate with them in a couple of different ways. Huawei will provide funding for universities. So we'll sponsor professors on their research or innovation work with no strings attached. The results can be papers published by the professors or just exploratory findings. Huawei does not claim any rights or interests from this research work. And also, Huawei and some universities will partner to research specific technologies that both parties are interested in. Before these programs begin, we'll agree on whether any resulting intellectual property will be shared by one or both parties. That's just the industry standard. Like the presidents of many universities have said, patents generated by universities will have no real market value unless they're put into commercial use. Therefore, Huawei and the universities are working together to translate these patents and technologies into commercial assets that contribute to society. We'll continue to invest in university partnerships that support basic scientific research. We believe that's the best way to prepare for the future and ensure the benefits of technology reach the greatest number of people.
Do you think there is a technology Cold War going on, and what do you think the long-term effect of that could be?
Well, I certainly hope not. Here's why. The telecom industry has made tremendous progress since 1G systems were introduced in the late 1970s. The markets opened up, and the industry came together, working gradually towards shared standards. From 3G to 4G, we saw the number of standards go from 4 down to 2. So we have more unification and more momentum. Now, with 5G, for the first time ever, we have globally unified standards. This is huge. This will speed up innovation, lower costs, and help different forms of digital technology converge, which creates even greater value. This Cold War attitude towards digital technology, where this country can't be trusted or that company can't be trusted, there's a real concern that we might go back to the old days where you have systems can't talk to one another. Even we won't see completely incompatible ecosystem, but we'll see slower innovation if the U.S. decides to close itself off from the rest of the world.
So it is clear, as the standards have done in the past, the global supply chain is interlocked and connected. Do you think it's possible to unwind the global supply chain?
I don't think anyone can unwind the global supply chain at this point. All tech sectors are highly interconnected, not just China and the U.S., but globally. No one is in a position where they can just get rid of global joint innovation efforts or create all key components domestically. That will be too costly, impractical, and you will risk falling behind. Innovation by American companies is stimulated by access to the Chinese market. Leading U.S. semiconductor companies are making huge profit in China. Then they will reinvest money back into R&D so that they can continue to innovate and stay competitive. And innovation flows both directions across the Pacific. China is producing more STEM graduates than any other country in the world right now. It is transitioning from a manufacturing economy to an innovation-based economy. So the U.S. can benefit from this new influx of ideas and talent, just as it can benefit from working with other countries as well.
Let's talk about Huawei's reputation. The company's been accused of intellectual property theft over the years. Is that coincidence or is that part of the culture?
The short answer is neither. In the tech sector, every single major company has, at one point or another, been dragged into litigation over IP. Sometimes they're the accuser, sometimes they're the accused. It's just a fact of doing business when you're dealing with complex technology. That's not to say IP theft is okay, because it is not. Intellectual property is private property, and it is protected by law. Disputes should be resolved in court. Over the last 30 years, no court has ever concluded that Huawei engaged in malicious IP theft, and we have not required by any court to pay damages for this. Just like any other company, Huawei is not perfect, but Huawei is not evil. We respect the importance of IP protection and the role it plays in innovation.
How much work has Huawei done to protect its own intellectual property?
Our respect for ideas and innovation lies at the very heart of our own success. Through 2018, Huawei has been granted almost 88,000 patents, and 11,000 of them were granted right here in the U.S. Over the past 4 years, Huawei has received $1.4 billion in licensing revenue. And over the past 30 years, we have paid over $6 billion in royalties to legally implement the IP of other companies. Nearly 80% of that is paid to American companies. Huawei's collaborative approach to IP is shown by the simple fact that a lot of our technology breakthroughs are incorporated into open standards that govern 3G, 4G, and 5G. So that means even some countries do not buy products directly from Huawei. They still use our patents and benefit from the technologies we create. That's just how the industry works and how we keep the innovation flowing. We'll continue to adopt an open and cooperative approach to IP and make sure our own patent licensing is fair, responsible, and non-discriminatory. And we would like to see the same from the industry at large.
The UK is moving towards a decision that will give Huawei access to its future 5G networks, and earlier Germany has left the door open for deployments from companies like Huawei. Do you see this causing tension between the US and European countries, or do you see that it could be an opportunity for the US to learn from what's going on in Europe?
I can't speak on behalf of any government administration, so I don't know if it will cause any rifts. But I certainly hope the direction the UK and Germany are taking sets a good example in general for other countries, including the US. It has been good to see that European countries are embracing our testing centers and the use of industry-wide standards. Germany's comprehensive approach to standards will set requirements and certification on testing that will apply to all vendors. This is what is necessary to establish an objective, transparent basis for knowing what products are worthy of trust. We believe it is a very positive step towards stronger cybersecurity. We hope the U.S. will follow suit, and we're ready to have a conversation about it if and when the current U.S. administration is ready to discuss with us.
When you look at Huawei's Q3 results, it seems like the company, even though it's been under tremendous pressure and political pressure, it still managed to achieve incredible yearly growth. Why do you think the company was able to continue to do this?
For the first 3 quarters of the year, Huawei's revenue grew 24% year over year, with a profit of 8.7%. That's a remarkable story. We have signed 60 5G commercial contracts around the world and shipped over 400,000 5G massive MIMO antenna units. And our consumer business is doing well. We reached 200 million smartphone shipment milestone 64 days ahead of the same milestone in 2018. Even Huawei is under massive pressure from the U.S. government we continue to find alternative solutions to deal with these challenges. We invest heavily into R&D. We don't just focus on products. We also look for solutions for end-to-end supply chains.
According to the market research that I've seen, Huawei is a leader in 5G base stations, in shipments, deployments, and just generally getting the technology out there into the market. Is Huawei going to license its technology to U.S. companies, or has it started doing that already?
Well, recently, our founder, Mr. Ren, offered to license our full stack of 5G technology to an American company. Mr. Ren believes the U.S. would really benefit from having its own telecom equipment provider. The industry will benefit from having more competition, and it will help lower costs and stimulate innovation. It will also help create more U.S. jobs, both in the telecom and manufacturing industries. So it's an extraordinary offer.
We've talked about the pipeline for innovation, some geopolitics, and most importantly, the direction of 5G. Joy, thanks so much for giving us Huawei's perspective on this.
Thank you, Phil.